AI. The year is 2026, and we are well beyond the initial hype cycle at this point. What we're seeing right now is a fundamental transformation in how private industries operate and really how governments manage their very capacity to function. So we're going to look directly at the data to see exactly how these massive changes are playing out on the ground.
To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of what we're talking about, just take a look at this number. 53%. Generative AI reached 53% global adoption in just 3 years. That is significantly faster than the adoption of the personal computer or even the internet itself. And look, this isn't just people playing around with chatbots anymore. This incredibly rapid uptake has created a staggering $172 billion annual consumer surplus in the United States alone. That is real, tangible value being injected straight into the economy.
So here is our roadmap for today. It's kind of a macro to micro to meta journey. We'll start with the 2026 AI economic boom, then we'll zoom in to look at transforming agriculture and healthcare, followed by reshaping education and creativity. After that, we'll zoom back out for governments and sovereign AI, and finally wrap up with the global governance gap.
All right, Section 1, the 2026 AI economic boom. We are literally in the midst of an unprecedented macroeconomic boom. Global corporate investment in AI has more than doubled, and private investment, that's growing at over 127%. But this massive influx of capital is actively rewriting the labor market in ways that honestly might surprise you. Now, what's really interesting about this data is what it shows about the workforce shift. You've got AI agents and AI prompting sitting right at the top of the fastest-growing skills. But here is the critical flip side. While the demand for those AI management skills is just skyrocketing, employment for young software developers, specifically folks ages 22 to 25, has actually dropped by nearly 20%. The market doesn't just want manual coders anymore. It's demanding professionals who know how to guide autonomous systems.
Moving right along to Section 2, transforming agriculture and healthcare.
So, moving away from the macroeconomy, let's look at how AI is completely revolutionizing the world's absolute oldest industry, farming. Thanks to the expansion of rural broadband, like satellite internet, and capable crop scouting drones that now cost less than a used laptop, farmers are running sophisticated foundation models right out in the dirt. And the returns? They are staggering. Yields are jumping 15 to 20%. Water usage is being slashed by 35%, and chemical inputs are dropping by up to 90%. This definitely isn't old McDonald's farm anymore. This is precision agriculture operating at an unprecedented scale.
So how exactly are they getting those 35% water savings? Well, the AI basically acts as a hyper-vigilant farmhand. First off, soil sensors check the root zones. Then, AI models calculate water evaporation, they pull in weather forecasts to make sure they aren't watering right before a rainstorm, adjust for the specific growth stage of the plant, and finally use satellite mapping to spot hidden water stress before a human eye could ever see it. It's like a giant puzzle coming together. But remember, the human element is still totally vital here. The AI points out exactly where a crop is stressed, but an expert agronomist is the one who decides how to best save it.
And you know, we're seeing that exact same shift from basic tools to complex systems happening over in healthcare. Health systems are moving way beyond using AI as just a digital scribe or a simple diagnostic tool. They are now integrating multi-agent AI systems directly into their clinical workflows. So they're treating them less like software and much more like autonomous digital colleagues that actually collaborate through structured reasoning protocols.
And this brilliantly illustrates the massive leap we're talking about. When tested on highly complex published case studies, human physicians working entirely unaided scored about 20% accuracy. But introduce a multi-agent AI framework into the mix, that accuracy absolutely skyrockets to 85.5%. You've got specialized AI agents acting as diagnosticians or pharmacists, collaborating to solve medical mysteries that would easily stump a single human mind.
All right, on to Section 3, reshaping education and creativity. So we've seen AI out in the fields and in the hospitals, but what about the classroom? I mean, we've all felt the urge to let technology do the heavy lifting for us, but in education, it's creating a pretty dangerous disconnect. When students offload their cognitive effort to AI, sure, they produce A-plus outputs in the moment, but they experience what researchers are calling the mirage of false mastery. Basically, their actual critical thinking skills plummet. Because of this, forward-thinking institutions are realizing that just grading a final essay is completely dead. The focus has to shift entirely to the actual process of learning.
To fight back against this false mastery, a recent study identified 4 specific pillars of digital pedagogy that force students to actually think.
When educators use explicit, scaffolded instruction featuring interactive multimedia, asynchronous forums, collaborative projects, and adaptive learning, it's a huge positive predictor of a student's critical thinking skills. Technology shouldn't replace the human struggle of learning. These 4 pillars prove it should be used to carefully guide it instead.
And it's a similar story in creative fields like documentary filmmaking. Professionals aren't using AI to replace their creative vision, they're using it as a powerhouse development tool. Filmmakers are utilizing ChatGPT and Notebook LM to organize massive mountains of research and draft treatments. They're using Midjourney and Google VO for visual ideation, and tools like 11 Labs and Suno to draft audio and voiceovers. It essentially allows creators to rapidly visualize and test out concepts, drastically speeding up the development phase before they spend a single dollar on actual production.
Which brings us to Section 4, Governments and Sovereign AI.
So the private sector, from farms to film sets, is completely transformed. But if we zoom back out to the global level, how are governments actually reacting to all these widespread disruptions? Well, they're doing it by prioritizing a critical new geopolitical concept for 2026, AI sovereignty. National policy isn't just about passing regulations or writing safety rules anymore. It is now fundamentally about maintaining independent state capacity. Governments have realized that if they don't control their own AI destiny, they risk total reliance on external powers for their economic stability and, honestly, their very national security.
And because advanced model development is currently so heavily concentrated in just a tiny handful of countries, nations worldwide are urgently investing in their own physical infrastructure. They're pouring massive funds into national data centers, public compute clusters, and domestic talent pipelines. They're essentially building the physical bedrock required to ensure they aren't left behind or completely beholden to a few massive tech conglomerates.
And finally, Section 5, the global governance gap.
Now, governments are urgently deploying AI into public administration for things like predictive policing and welfare eligibility. But the reality is, the technology is vastly outpacing the oversight. So to address this massive governance gap and the dangerous institutional incoherence we're seeing, policy experts are proposing a UN-backed global AI governance roadmap. The goal here is to unify heavily fragmented global initiatives into a single, structured instrument based on 3 pillars. First, managing risks through common scientific evaluations of frontier models. Second, distributing the rewards of AI through equitable technical access across regions. And third, aligning AI rules globally.
So the crucial point is that third pillar, which relies on a concept called regulatory interoperability. Think of it kind of like this. You absolutely cannot force every country in the world to adopt the exact same laws. It's just not going to happen. But interoperability establishes minimum global baselines, things like audit requirements and transparency standards, while entirely preserving a nation's sovereign right to govern its own people. It's really all about reducing friction, not demanding global uniformity.
Which brings us to the core tension of 2026. The private sector is already utilizing AI as an autonomous colleague, generating billions in surplus and revolutionizing daily life. But as these systems embed themselves into the very fabric of our society, we really have to ask, are our global institutions actually ready to manage the workforce of tomorrow? That is the gap that will define the next decade. Thank you so much.